Welcome, everybody, to the Seven Figure Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Nick, with my co-host, Jack.
What's up, guys?
We're looking forward to connecting people all across the country, showing them how to sell real estate, make money in real estate, invest in real estate, and just be a good person. Hopefully, we're here for the long run. I just saw the Amazon bill, and it was a shocker. So we've got cameras, we've got lights, and hopefully knowledge to provide.
Yeah, full-time media guy behind the camera, and I'm super excited to grow the community. In this episode, we're going to talk about networking. We're going to talk about our goals with this brand, networking with you guys and providing free education and tons of networking value. Some of our stories as far as real estate investing, how Nick got his start in the industry. And yeah, with that said, let's get right into the episode. We don't know the name of the show yet.
Yeah.
It's just full transparency. We're coming up with it right now. By the time this goes live, I'm sure there will be some type of name embedded for you guys, but I'm super excited to start this show. First, I want to talk about how Nick and I met. I think it's like a cool story and plays well along with like this whole real estate networking theme that we have going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, Nick, you want to take this story?
Yeah. So, I was at a real estate conference, just learning how to do things better. Mm-hmm. And Jack came and sat at the table and we started talking and I was like, so who do you guys sell real estate for? I'm like, well, we don't sell real estate. Well, what are you doing at a real estate conference? Well, we're just networking.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. I was like, so what are you networking for? And, you shared your other podcast with us. And I was like, well, let me look this up under the table. And I kind of type it in. And I was like, wait a second. You don't have a little YouTube following. Yeah. It was really cool. So, I wanted to really get to know you guys and meet you.
Yeah. And it was cool. And I think after that, we exchanged numbers and then we ended up just kind of getting coffee a few times, talking, talked about other business ideas. And what's really cool is kind of like our mix of skill sets. Like I understand social media and short form content, and you understand selling real estate. So I don't know, eventually down the line, I think we got Sushi and we kind of talked about, let's just like combine what we're doing.
Right.
Like you understand social media marketing and growing like an audience, and you understand how to sell real estate. So I think literally that day I went back to like into my office and bought like a real estate licensing education.
Yeah, you totally did.
And then in 2 weeks, I had it done.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of gone for a while, and then I came back and passed the test, and now I got my license.
Yeah, which is amazing. Yeah. Truly, it's amazing. So many people buy that class and then take 6 months and then to get the test, and so.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, my brain's probably still a little swollen from it. It took. I had to. It was like a lot of. I thought it was gonna be easier than it was. It was a lot of reading. I don't think I've ever read a textbook that fast, but it was. I'm super excited to be here and kind of combining our skill sets. And let's talk about like our whole goal with like this brand, this podcast, and growing kind of like a national brokerage of like really good. Our target is like younger entrepreneurs who like aren't licensed yet, but we'll really work with anyone.
Right.
From anywhere from like an interpersonal level, creating educational content, and then creating a community around that. And then I think the biggest thing too is like doing the networking for them, like the hard networking of like getting your foot in the door, like setting up with like a super good brokerage in their area, like a top performing brokerage, getting them buyer leads, getting them sellers, what may be. But it's really cool because talk about your experience. And I think we're going to really use your brain as an asset for teaching kind of everyone in this podcast community in terms of like how you've grown as a realtor and how long have you been in the game?
This is my 22nd year. Over 2 decades.
Okay, cool. How much in real estate have you sold over the last 22 years?
I wish I had a great number, but hundreds of millions.
That's pretty cool. Hundreds of millions.
Yeah, hundreds of millions, I would say, hundreds of millions.
Okay.
And then in commission income, there to follow.
Yeah, so it's easy to get your real estate license. Like anyone can just take a course and then take the test and then get their license. Mm-hmm. But the hard part is the systems in place.
Right.
And developing those systems. Like how did you have a mentor when you got into the game?
Totally had a mentor. Yeah. My mentor was, groundbreaking, in the greater Portland market. She started out as a single mom and started selling real estate and was one of the top earners, top producers right out of the gate. Yeah. And, she developed systems and created systems and then I came on board and ran with those systems, made those systems bigger and better and changed them. And, really she laid the groundwork, work ethic, how to generate leads, how to service a client, because that's really the key.
Yeah. So these systems have been how many years in developing since
1984.
Since 1984, these systems. And then our goal was like, all right, now we're going to share with you guys these systems.
Oh yeah. And like open book, like this is how I do it. This is how I generate a lead. This is how I get, once you generate a lead, this is what I say at a table. This is, we can show you every step.
And the craziest thing too is like, we're doing this like all for free.
100%.
Like we don't want to, like normally, you can go out and pay like $5,000 for Grant Cardone's real estate thing. Or you could like work personally with a brand and like a proven system for free. And like, what's the risk? You know what I mean?
Yeah, there is no risk.
And I think the coolest thing about real estate too is there's a lot of professions out there. For example, like trading, I come from like a stock trading background, where you can't kind of half-ass. Like if you try to half-ass trading, you're going to lose money.
Right.
If you try to half-ass starting a coffee shop, it's not going to go well. Your employees are going to be mismanaged. You're not going to be able to keep track of inventory properly.
Right.
But real estate like really is something like you can just passively learn and network, and then it like what's the word? Like the fruits in the future you'll be able to reap.
So it's a very, very organic. You sow seed. You sow seeds, and then later on you'll bear the fruit. Right?
Exactly.
So real estate, you can do that. Our industry, real estate industry, has not had the best reputation, right? They usually, you'll see us, they'll depict us as one step above a used car salesman. But really, what I did wanting to get into this business was change the business. I wanted to make the business more professional, right? I mean, because 100% you can do this part time. I mean, it used to be, not to overclassify, but it used to be, people that would just do it part time, and sit at their kitchen table. But now, there are a lot of people that have turned this into a profession, and they do it as a business, and it's a profession.
Well, we were kind of talking about like back in the day, being a real estate agent wasn't like a glorified job. And then all of a sudden these Netflix shows like Selling Sunset started coming out, and people started seeing $100,000, $200,000 commission checks.
Right.
And they realized like, oh shoot, there's actually a lot of potential in this industry.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden like all these people flooded in the industry. And then I think just the mass number of now competition has been good for the industry, making it evolve and becoming more and more professional.
Right.
And people are realizing like, oh shoot, this is a business that is highly high. Can you explain like how was real estate being an agent like scalable?
Oh, sure. I mean, so real estate, you scalable through leverage.
Yeah.
Okay. So through leverage, once you get to a certain saturation point, you can't handle any more clients.
Exactly.
You just don't have time. So what you need to do is you need to then hire an assistant. So when you hire your assistant, the assistant's going to take a lot of that paperwork, a lot of the stuff off your plate that you can't handle any longer. Client communications, emails, phone calls, all of that stuff, which will allow you to free yourself up to work with more people.
Yeah.
Right. So once you get to work with more people, now you would then hire a second assistant, and that assistant's going to handle your marketing. So you're going to get even busier. So you're going to not going to be doing all the marketing, and then from there you would tack on a buyer agent. And then your buyer agent would handle all of your buyers, and you would just deal with listings, because listings is where the money is.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's money in buyers as well, but listings you can manage. I mean, I can manage 50 listings, but I can only manage about 10 buyers at one time, right? Because a buyer needs to go out and look at a house and run around and do all of this stuff. It's just much more time consuming.
Interesting. That's actually, that's a really cool point. And another thing about real estate too, which kind of just popped in my head, is I was thinking about like, obviously I have other businesses, and some of them are very capital intensive and some require no capital.
Right.
But as far as like getting into real estate as a business, you got to pay for the education, which is normally around like $500, and then get into a firm. And then there's obviously some other like fees that come involved, but you're not really going to be spending more than $3,000 to become a real estate agent.
No, not at all.
And
you don't own any product.
Exactly.
And you own zero product.
Which is really cool, because then you're like, okay, and then you get a couple leads, you become established, and then you could start scaling and then bringing on a team member. So it's like a really, as far as risk goes and risking a ton of money, and maybe someone who doesn't have a lot of money to start, there's a ton of potential from like nothing.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with our industry is the lower barrier to entry.
Yeah.
But it's also good.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because you can, as you said, you can come to the table with no money. And as long as you can market yourself well, learn the industry, learn what you're going to learn what you need to do, and be ethical, you can make a lot of money. So let's talk about some wins and successes that we've had.
Yeah. Okay.
In real estate, because this is a real estate podcast.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fitting. So talk about, I like your story. I think we talked about this at one of our coffee or lunches, whatever. Sure. You talked about how you got in the real estate game first, and your mentor said, if you want to learn how to sell real estate, you got to buy some real estate.
Right. Yeah.
Which is really funny.
Yeah. Which is great.
And
so young.
Did you have much money? How much money did you have at that time?
I had no money. I mean, I had a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, my working career was very, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur very young, way before entrepreneur was cool. I wanted to own a business. I wanted to run a business. I wanted I wanted my name at the bottom of the check. I didn't want somebody else's.
Okay.
So, I had, let's call it $10,000. I mean, not a lot. And my mentor was like, listen, if you're going to sell real estate, you need to buy real estate. You need to know what your clients are going to go through. So I found a property in Old Orchard, and I bought that single family home, and I moved in it and started renovating it and doing, painting and bathrooms and stuff like that. Just low work that I could do when I wasn't working. Come to find out, I was looking at the tax maps and realized that there actually was a buildable lot next door. So I ended up coming home one day, having, beat my head against the wall, and I ripped down an above ground pool that was sitting there, and then started my construction. So ended up buying a house, realizing that there was a buildable lot next door. Yep. Built that house there. And ended up selling the house that I bought, and then moved into the new house, and then ended up selling that. And that whole transaction, I made over $100,000.
And how old were you, and how long did that?
I was 22 years old, and it took me about less than 6 months. Maybe no, because that with build it was over a year.
Okay, so after you kind of did that, you're like, oh shit, this is cool. I like this.
It was really cool. I mean, after I did that, I had this pile of money. I went to my mentor, and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to buy a boat and live on it. And she's like, yeah, that's a great idea, Nick. Buy a depreciating asset.
So did you buy more real estate?
I bought more real estate.
Oh yeah, and what did that roll into? So
that rolled into a condo, and then a duplex, and then my duplex rolled into more duplexes, and then into multifamilies. So now that's my growth trajectory, is to buy more real estate and more units. Or doors.
That's interesting. So it's like the ability, I think, and also the ability like pyramid equity in real estate and borrowing against.
Sure.
So like, talk about like, how did you get the money to build? Because it was probably like $100,000 to build the spec house.
It was a little bit more than that, but yeah, it was called 150 grand, I think.
150 grand. So how'd you get that money?
So that we can get really gritty, but I've got the house itself. I realized that there's a buildable lot next door, so there's instant equity in that buildable lot, right? Okay. Because there was not a buildable lot there at the time.
So did you subdivide it and then borrow, and then you borrowed against the equity in the land?
Correct. Okay. So what I ended to do is I ended up subdividing it. I had to go to the bank. I had to go to the original bank and get them to do a partial release, because the whole land was already leaned.
So then you owned this outright.
Yeah. So I had to get a partial release because there was enough equity in the primary house to get a partial release. So I actually owned the land free and clear at that time.
Okay.
So then I went out and did a land loan or construction loan to build. So I had no money out of pocket from there, because I used the bank's money to build.
Yeah.
So I built that house on the bank's money.
That's really interesting. And what were the interest rates at that time?
7%.
Which is really funny, because people are like complaining about like it's like 6 right now, but back in the 1980s, 1990, 2000, interest rates were like, that was normal, like 7% even.
So my mother,
bought
her first house. It was 17%.
Yeah.
So now, I bought my house I think the house that I bought, it was like 7.5, and that, the new construction was like 6.5, something like that.
Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, so we're right where we need to be. I mean, interest rates, and we can get into this on a later topic, or later podcast, but interest rates right now, once we settle out around 5.5, I think that's where we're going to be for a long time. I mean, they just peaked last month. Again, I think they tapped out to 7, but that's just because of other stuff's going on.
As an agent that's like actively involved in the real estate market, how much of a slowdown in buyer versus seller and buyer and seller leads have you noticed because of the interest rate hikes?
I think there was a giant slowdown when it first happened, but things are starting to tick back up. But there's always people buying and selling.
Yeah.
Like, so when I talk to agents, they're like, oh, there's no business, there's no business, there's no business. And I'll go to the MLS and I'll say, okay, let me see what closed today. And 50 houses closed. Like, no, those agents are just doing a better job marketing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they found those buyers. You just didn't find the buyers. Somebody found the sellers. In one transaction, let's say 50 houses closed yesterday. That's actually 2 transactions. So there's 100 deals right there.
Yeah.
Right? So, you're just not doing a good job finding those people. It's not that there isn't business.
Okay. That's interesting.
Getting into real estate when you're young is key.
I agree. I mean, initially, like, my passion was real estate. Before I ever got into stocks, it was like real estate. I picked up like every like real estate book I can get my hands on. And what I did, which I think was super important to kind of like my early success was I found a real estate mentor.
Right.
And I went to his properties and this was kind of back during COVID. And what happened was all these inns I lived in like a resort town. So all these inns started closing down and he started buying up all the inns for like on fire sale because they were all going out of business and nobody wanted it. Why would you want to buy an inn? You know what I mean? When they were going out of business.
Right.
So he bought them and then he was converting them all into Airbnb. So they were all these old inns built in like 1780. One of the names was literally like the 1785 inn.
Wow.
And because it was built in 1785.
Yeah.
And it had wallpaper from 1785. And I was doing like this, like a classic like internship for literally zero pay.
Yeah.
Like scraping down old wallpaper. And then in exchange, I would get knowledge. I would go down into like the common room or the restaurant area in the inn and we talk about creative financing for like 2 hours and like how T-bills work. And I was 16. I was learning about like all this like really cool economic and like knowledge and how to like properly leverage money. And then I started writing like I started like doing marketing for him. I would like drive around and I'd find properties that I liked and then I would go onto like the tax parcel ID and then I would find the name of the owners and I'd look them up in like a white pages or whatever. I forgot what those are called. And then I'd get their number and then I'd like cold call them, which I found out is actually like illegal. I think.
Not really, but I mean, if they're on the do not call list, it is. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what that even was. I was just calling people. Never got a lead. I remember I almost got my hands on equity in like a $1.2 million like 10-unit multifamily that I found and got like. And then someone outbid us by like 100,000. We actually like had a $1.1 million offer, and I was gonna get like 20% equity, and I was 16.
That's awesome.
And I was so happy. When it didn't go through, I was pretty let down. But anyways, never gave up. And then one day I found a property. The owners were getting divorced. So it was kind of like a distressed sale. And they owned a bakery.
Yeah.
So the house was super freaking weird. Like the kitchen was actually an industrial kitchen, but it wasn't like a normal kitchen. Like it wasn't like usable at all. It was a normal kitchen.
Sure.
So the property was weird. It was a couple getting divorced. So they had it on the market for like $375. And then I was like, all right, we'll offer $300,000 because this is like it needed around $150,000.
And this is during COVID.
And this is October of 2020.
Okay.
We end up getting the house, but I didn't have any money. I was 17 at the time, so I went to my mom. I said, "Mom, these are the numbers in the house. This is they're distressed sale." And she actually helped me a lot through the I kind of went to her earlier in this process. But anyways, what we did was and my mom's like successful, like she's money, but not enough to like go buy a $300,000 house in cash.
Sure.
And so we kind of came up with this creative financing in lieu of my old real estate mentor. Kind of what he taught me was what we were going to do is we were going to borrow against the equity, right? Borrowing against the equity is huge. Like keyword, being able to pyramid equity, borrowing against the equity in our primary residence.
Right.
And because what happened was with COVID and kind of like the recovery from COVID, or sorry, it was October 2021. So this was like the recovery of COVID.
Sure.
So all of a sudden, like houses went up in value by $70,000.
Sure.
So our house went up in value by like $70,000. So got that was appraised, got that value realized by the bank, and then borrow against that additional equity in the home.
Right.
And then use that as a down payment on the new property, and then combine the two mortgages and then extended the amortization.
Correct.
So all of a sudden, we're paying the same amount that we were, but now we have two houses.
Correct.
And we were able to, again, borrow against more equity to get a line of credit to pay for $150,000 in renovations.
Right.
So the renovations took from October to February, and now it rents out for like $350 a night on Airbnb.
That's awesome.
And we're selling it, and then it's on the market for like $700,000, and we bought it for $300,000.
Yeah, that's a huge win.
Exactly. So that was kind of like my first. That's how I got my hand. And then in exchange for kind of like me being involved and motivating and the knowledge in the property, and I was there after school at like 10 o'clock framing walls,
right?
Because I used to work construction for like for a lot of the process. I got 20% equity, like sweat equity. Because I didn't put up the money. I was like, all right, I just got a little bit of equity, but there's 100,000 or it's like $80,000 in equity in a property, and I'm 17. So
we hope you're enjoying this episode today. We partner with the CE Shop to help you get licensed in over 27 states in the United States. Reach out to us today so you can make your way to a 7-figure real estate agent. Please go check out the show notes and go to my website, www.danburyguerin.com. If you are interested in buying or selling real estate in the state of Maine, give us a call. We'd be more than happy to help you grow your net worth.
The ability to get involved in real estate and partner too with people. It's like if you surround yourself with like a real estate mentor and he's like, hey, listen, if you bring me a deal and you do all the property analysis as far as profit, losses, expenses, you manage the construction, you're actually there doing construction, you manage a lot of the financing, like hell yeah, I'll give you 20% equity in this property.
Yeah.
So the ability to get your hands on real estate because it is like a leverage game, right? I mean, you talked about how you got your first house with a 3.5% down, you know, and anyone could work their butts off and make $10,000 and get that into a property.
Sure.
And then it's kind of like the segue of like being a real estate agent too. It just all works together so well. You become an agent, you know, you sell a couple houses, you have $10,000 in cash under your belt, and then all of a sudden now you have real estate connections in the game.
Right.
You can be your agent for their own listing. So now you save money on the commission check and just put that right back into the property.
Correct.
And you understand how it works, and you kind of have this like now network of real estate mentors you can go and ask questions to.
Yeah, I mean, but even think about, as a real estate agent, even think about this, you know, about this deal. You know, so you're working with an investor who says, "Geez, I want to go buy this house," and you've got 3% in the deal well, you can't do that with commissions, but you've got a percentage of commission that's going to come to you.
Yeah.
What if you go with that investor and say, "Hey, I want to roll that into the deal"?
Exactly.
You know,
and more equity.
Yeah,
you can borrow against.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, it's a wonderful game, and if you learn financing, you know, it's unbelievable. You know, I mean, you can, you know, stocks and, you know, I know that's your background, stocks and bonds and trading and all that stuff. You can leverage money so much easier with real estate than you can in a stock. You know, in a stock portfolio, if you need $100,000 to trade $100,000.
Oh yeah,
right. You know, I can go get $100,000 with $3,000.
And the thing is too, it's a lot less risky. There are, like, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of risk in, you know, buying a $100,000 house for $3,000. But as far as like trading, you know, let's say if I want to leverage my money using options, like I can blow that money like that. With real estate, it's like it's not as liquid. Exactly.
Though. It's not as liquid, but real estate, you know, the house has value. And it's always going to have value.
Yeah.
Like, so if you bought it for $100,000, you know, at least in our market, in the greater Portland area, even in 2008, the worst downturn the state of Maine has seen in a long time, we only lost about 23% of value.
Exactly. And if I buy like a risky option contract, it could lose, lose 100% of value literally in a minute, and it's possible. So that's what I was getting at. It's like real estate, there are assets and there's what's the word? It's finite, and I think it's the homogeneity, like the uniqueness of a property. Like no property is ever the same.
Right.
Therefore, it has like no property is ever going to be worth $0 the next day, unless something. Is that even possible? Because land
is never going to disappear.
Land is never. I mean, the house could burn down, but that's like.
Yeah, but then you still have equity in the land.
Exactly.
And as long as you have it insured, you're going to be all right. So what we want to do, you know, is when you first start, you want to make sure that you're targeting the right people, and you're going to target your network first. And, you know, and even if you're 16, 17, 18 years old, you have a network. So like, who is my network? Yes, it's the kids that you went to high school with, but your kids, the kids you went to high school with or you're going to high school with are not your buyers currently. They're going to be your buyers later on, but currently it could be their parents. It could be their, it could be your football coach. It could be your hockey coach. It could be whomever you know in that network. It could be the person behind the barista counter at the coffee shop that you go to. Yeah. You know, it could be your teachers. You know, whomever you have a connection with could be a potential client, because everybody is a potential client. You know, everybody needs a place to live, wants a place to live, and it's the American dream to own a home, right? So like everybody will eventually want to buy a home or buy an investment property, because it's just the way you're going to make a ton of money. Yeah. So, you know, how do you focus on, you know, who do you focus on? You know, if you look at, you know, if you're getting into this young and you're, you know, not to speak poorly about, you know, say one of your friends' parents are getting a divorce, you know, I mean, you said that you bought your transaction, it was a divorced couple, right? You know, if you're a real estate agent, that divorced couple, that's one transaction. They're going to sell the house that they lived in together. And then if you're lucky, each of them are buying a house. So that one connection is potentially 3 sales, right? So you've got, you know, and, you know, and if you have somebody, you know, if you have, you know, the average, you know, let's use my average sale. My average sale is $650,000. Yeah. So right there is a potential for $1.8 million in transactions, and $1.8 million in transactions plus the commission. It's not a bad day.
That's funny. So it's a real estate agent. I mean, it's kind of like dark humor, but you get a call from like, hey, we're getting divorced. We need to sell our house and buy 2 houses. You're kind of like,
yes. Yeah. I mean, it's you know, it's not you know, you're not I mean, you're not how can I say, you don't want to benefit from their tragedy, but you know.
But it's about working smarter, not harder.
Correct.
And finding multiple transaction deals.
Yeah. You know, and ultimately at the end of the day, this is what I truly believe in my heart. If you give it out in slices, it comes back in loaves. So I'm never looking towards one transaction. I'm never looking towards that that commission check.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, you're gonna have commission breath, and nobody's gonna want to work with you. You know, so if they think you're in it,
Commission breath.
yeah, if they think you're in it for just the money,
Yeah.
you're never gonna survive.
Oh, that's interesting. Commission breath. I like that.
Yeah.
So, all right, can you give me an example of like a multiple transaction deal? Is it like finding a buyer to a seller, and then that seller needs a new house, and then finding that buyer?
Yeah. So I mean, this has happened to me in the past, you know, and I'll try to tie it all together. But you know, you've got one client who calls you and says, "Hey, geez, Nick, I really want to sell my house, but I'm not willing to move unless I find something that I want to go." And that's usually what happens, right? People are stuck, and right now we have an inventory shortage because people are stuck
Because of interest rates.
Well, interest rates, but there's no inventory. You know this, supply and demand, right?
Yeah.
More supply, the prices are going to come down.
Yeah.
Right? Less supply, prices are going to go up, and that's what's happening right now. There are just no houses on the market.
Interesting. Well, do you think that's kind of because, like, you know, people bought their homes 10 years ago, whatever. Now they've appreciated 50%.
Sure.
You know, interest rates have gone up, whatever, 3%. So now they want to go buy a house, but now all the houses are even more. So it's like they really can't upgrade a house. And then just by taking on a new loan, all of a sudden if they have like a 2% loan, 3% loan, they're like, it would be stupid to throw that out the window.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's some of that. But I also think that we have a housing stock shortage, and that goes back all the way to 2008 when we had the crash, right? Builders stopped building. You know, we need about 500,000 homes built in the United States annually just to keep up with population.
So that's funny. Even though interest rates are sky high, right? The record high as far as, what did you say? They just said like 7%?
Yeah, 7%. Let's just say in the last 15 years.
Housing prices are still going up.
Correct.
Because there's not a lot of supply.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, okay, that's really interesting. I mean, I would have thought the opposite because interest rates are going up. Not many people are buying, but it's more about actually is it like the sellers control the price really more than the actual?
Well, I mean, the sellers control the price, but really the market controls the price.
Okay.
Right. I mean, you know, you can put your 1-bedroom condo on the market for $4 million, but nobody's going to buy it in the local market. Maybe in New York City they would, but you know, here in Portland, Maine, you know, you've got to price your home or your property in the correct segment of the market that's going to get the most eyeballs, right? Back to supply and demand. So if you list the home in a segment of the market that's where your buyer is not, nobody's going to see it.
When you say segment in a market, you're talking about like financial. I can afford a house that's over $250,000, but I can't. But $300,000 is too much for me.
Yeah. So when I'm talking about a segment of market, somebody calls me up and says, "Hey Nick, I want to buy a house. Okay, what's your price point?" I can afford up to $600,000. So I would search a market that's probably basically $500,000 to $600,000 because there's no inventory. The more inventory, I would probably shrink that up. You know, I'd probably say, okay, $550,000 to $600,000. Yeah. So that buyer that's only searching up to $600,000, if you list your home at $605,000, that buyer's not going to see it just because of the search engines, right? You go to the Zillow and you say, "Geez, I want to buy a house that goes to this price."
Yeah.
So really positioning your home in the segment of the market that's going to get the most eyeballs, which creates demand, is going to increase price.
Okay, because price is ultimately what controls someone being able to buy a house the most. It's not really the location. It's like first they got to look at the price, and if the price doesn't hit, then it's like it's out of the picture.
Right.
So do you have any stories of like where you've like manipulated price and it's kind of like helped sell the deal faster or something? I'm hitting at the story.
Oh yeah. So I mean, you know, there was one instance where I had a property listed at one price, and what I ended up doing is I actually took it off the market, and I said, "Well, geez, that's not the right price." And instead of lowering the price, I actually increased the price. So when I increased the price, I actually sold it the next day because that buyer just wasn't looking at the price point that I had it marketed at. So I wasn't marketing to the right audience. Now, obviously, that's
really funny. I mean, that's kind of like, has that happened multiple times or just that one time?
A couple times. You know, it's not the norm. The norm is usually what ends up happening is you sit with a seller and you're like, "Hey, this is where I think the home should be positioned in the market. What do you think?" Because you're not setting. Once again, you're not setting the price, right? The market's setting the price, and the homeowner's truly choosing where to list it. You know, because most of the time, what's happening right now is, you know, sellers are saying, "Oh, geez, my house is worth more."
Yeah.
You know, so they're overshooting the runway. So, you know, you'll have to price correct. Millennials and Gen Z are twice the size of the baby boomer population.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's interesting because you always hear about the baby boomers talking about like economics and know all of a sudden now all the baby boomers are retired. So then all of a sudden this job market frees up, and then this causes X, Y, Z. But what people don't realize is that, you know, as the baby boomer, the size of their population was significant in, what is the age? Like 1940s,
1946 to 64.
So that size population was super significant back then, but now Gen Z and Gen Y are together twice as almost, I think almost twice as large as the baby boomers.
Correct.
So it's funny that people put so much emphasis on the baby boomers when now it's like, all right, we should shift our focus and start focusing on this new generation, especially for like younger, maybe aspiring real estate agents out there. All of a sudden their generation is going to be the one who needs it. Because everyone, you know, not everyone will buy a house, but most people want to buy a house.
Right.
And real estate is like the largest industry out there. And pretty soon, Generation Y are already buying houses, but Generation Z.
But they're just starting.
Exactly.
I mean, Generation Y is, you know, Gen Y is, the millennials are literally just starting to buy houses. And for several reasons, the prices, interest rates, they've been, you know, living with mom and dad for a long time or whatever. But, you know, people like you, the young professional entrepreneur that wants to be a realtor, is going to have a huge segment of the market that they're going to be able to talk with. And they're going to understand how to talk with them.
So you're referring to like social media.
Social media. I mean, this is what we are doing is going to reach that audience.
Yeah, because you're right. I mean, social media has all of a sudden, before Generation Y, it wasn't even a part of daily life, and now it's all consuming.
Right.
Social media is everything. I mean, it's like now paid ad spend is the number one choice for companies as far as marketing goes. And then social media brands having like a natural audience and compounding that is huge as far as what it can do for your business. And kind of, I mean, like why we're here today doing this show, because our bottom line, sell more houses, create a network of real estate agents and help them grow as agents too.
Right.
So
provide value.
So exactly. So like these new generations of like Y and Z, they actually understand how to use social media and they understand how their generation interacts with social media. So right from the get-go, starting now, they have a huge edge over all their competitors because they get the game.
Yeah.
It's funny. We have someone taking a photo of us.
Much bigger leg up.
So,
much bigger leg up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That was distracting. All right. So if you've been in the real estate game for 22 plus years, and then your mentor's been in the game for however many combined years, probably what you guys got like 50 years of networking.
Oh, easy.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I'm really excited about this podcast is because we're going to be able to interact with some really top dog real estate professionals. So getting people to come on, and for you guys, the viewers, first episode, but in the future, we're going to have some like really, really cool guests on.
I want to provide value.
Yeah.
I want to be able to provide value. And as I said earlier, I have a heart of a teacher. So I want to provide value to the next generation that's going to bring this up. So what we want to do is we truly want to provide value. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap into my network and get some of the best people on the market, best people in our market and across the country to sit on our podcast and tell us how they did it and what they're doing to be successful.
That's awesome. I mean, that's really cool. And I'm excited. Like, do you have any, can you talk about the credentials of like some of the guys that you're hoping to get on?
Yeah. So, there's people in Florida that I'm hoping to get on. There's people all through Maine that I know that are super high producers. Some of the best people in the industry. They do it the best. They're ethical. They know how to sell real estate and they know how to get leads. So, what we're going to tap into is easily some of the best people in the country.
That's really cool. And then also it's like, these people are network. And then if you kind of like join our community, like, this is more than just social media. You see our faces on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. This is actually like interpersonal connections. Like if you guys have ever remained we
tap into our network.
We are
man.
agents. We can sell you a house, but we can also help you guys network.
Yeah.
And that's our goal because the more money you make as agents, the better off we're all going to be. So because you're part of our network, right? So the better your network does, the better you do. So that's what's really cool and unique about this show is that it's not just something over social media. This is actually relationships that are going to foster in person.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Anyways, I think that does it for today's episode.
That's awesome.
I'm super excited for the future, bringing on new guests, growing our network through social media.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
That does it.
This is awesome. I can't wait. This has been great, man.
Sweet. Well, thank you guys for watching and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Bye.
Peace.